Now it's time to go ahead and work on the rear assembly, and I'm going to start with the rear shock tower. The first thing I need to do is attach the camber links that go in the back, and they are held in with a single screw. Now that the camber links have been attached, I'm going to go ahead and get the transmission, and it's time to hook these two together. Just going to slide it into position like that. I'm going to get this really long screw, and this long screw slides right through this hole right here, all the way through, and it screws into the other side of the motor plate. Now that that's been taken care of, it's time to move on to the rear A-arm brace. Now the front of it is a little bit more narrow than the back, and that is where you're going to be putting in the pins. So I'm going to get an A-arm, slide in position, and then I'm going to get the pin and push it in from the front. And now I need to do this with both sides. Now that we have this together, it's time to attach it to the transmission, and you'll see that it slides into position just like that. Now we can go ahead and attach it to the chassis. It's held to the chassis with 9 screws, 7 on bottom and 2 on top. Once you take care of all those screws, it's time to move on to the axle carriers. Now as you can see, there is a place for a bearing to go on each side of the axle carrier. Since I don't have any right now, I'm just going to be installing these bushings on each side. Now that all 4 bushings have been installed, it's time to attach it to the A-arm. Now, the thickest part of the axle carrier is going to be pointing forward on the RC. And also on the A-arm, depending on how you install them, you'll see that one side is thicker than the other. The thicker side is where you feed the pin into. So I'm going to slide this into position just like that. Get the pin and slide it right through the hole and screw it down the rest of the way. And it's the same process for the other side. Next up, I'm going to get the axle pin, slide it right through the axle carrier, get the drive shaft, slide that into the yoke just like this, and then I'm going to slide the other side of the drive shaft into the axle pin, just like that. Now, to hold it into place, I'm going to get the camber link and attach it to the top of the axle carrier with a single screw. Once that's taken care of, it's time to move on to the rear shocks. Now the rear shocks themselves are made of 3 pieces: the shaft, the rod, and the rod end. The rod slides in through the back of the shock shaft, and then the rod end just screws onto the end of the rod. Now, in order to install the springs, all I have to do is slide it over the shock shaft and then pull it all the way up. Then I'm going to get the shock cap itself, slide it onto the top, and then a screw goes right through the top of it and it holds it down. There is no oil in these shocks. Once I'm done assembling the rear shocks, it's time to attach it to the RC using 2 screws. One screw holds it to the top of the front of the rear shock tower, and the other one goes to the front of the base of the A-arm. Now that that's been taken care of, it's time for the front assembly. And first of all, I'm going to start with the steering linkage. The turnbuckles for this attach to the front of it, one on each side with a single screw. Once I have these 2 pieces connected, I can go ahead and slide it into the front of the chassis, just like this. And as you can see, it slides to the sides. Now it's time to work on the front A-arm brace. But before I attach the A-arms, I need to get this weird looking pin that looks more like a staple. I'm going to get this plastic brace, and I'm going to go ahead and slide that on. Now I'm going to get the brace itself, push an A-arm onto each side, and then I'm going to slide the pin right through the 2 front holes. After that, I'm going to get the front skid plate, put it into position right underneath, flip it upside down. I'm going to get the chassis, do the same thing while holding that piece in. I'm going to slide this into position, and I'm going to install the 2 bottom screws right here and there. After that, I'm going to get the front chassis brace. I'm going to slide it right on top. Now 4 screws hold this in, 2 on top near the back, and then 2 very long ones in the front bottom. Now it's time to flip it back over and attach the front upper links. These are held in with a screw on each side. Once those are taken care of, it's time to attach the caster blocks. The caster blocks are held to the A-arm using a pin that slides in through the back. Just slide it in through the hole. Once you get all the way down, screw it the rest of the way. And also, I'm going to be attaching the upper link to the top of the caster block. Now it's time to move on to the steering blocks. For the steering blocks, what you're going to do is get an axle pin, slide it into the steering block. Now we're going to push it into the caster block just like that, and then a pin goes right through the top of it. Now you're going to flip it upside down and attach the turnbuckle to the back of the steering block. Now that the steering linkage is complete, it's time to attach the front shock tower. It's held on using 2 screws. The last thing I'm going to be doing for this video is attaching the front shocks. They're exactly like the ones in the back, only these ones are a little bit shorter. So for the bottom, they're going to slide into this slot in the middle of the A-arm, and then a screw is going to go in right through the front to hold it in. And of course, the top of the shock is held on to the shock tower. And that is all that I'm going to be doing for this video.